everyone, welcome to another episode of Spiritually Incorrect. I'm your host, Seth Hart. Join with me is Jonathan Lyonhart.
Howdy.
Hey, John, what are we doing today?
I don't know. We're covering the news, but not the news that matters.
We are going to
not the news that's plaguing your soul.
Plaguing your soul, some of your souls.
Yeah.
People like Jonathan who consume the news 24/7 to the point that it just turns into a schizoid.
Yeah, I guess. That's me. I'm dead inside.
We are doing our second version of In the News, where we're going to cover some news stories, but we're going to cover some of those stories that may have flown under the radar. Some big things have obviously been going on. If you're curious about that, we've already done a 2-part episode on the election. Go back and check those out with Jim Wallace and R.R. Reno. So we've talked about that enough. We wanted to talk a little bit more about things that you might have missed. There's more going on in the world than just the stuff that if you turn on CNN or Fox.
What? No. America is the epicenter of existence. So what could possibly be happening beyond your political stuff?
Well, definitely nothing in Canada.
Yeah.
90% of your country, no one even lives in. So no, there is no news up there, John.
Well,
I know that was a veiled reference to Canada, so don't even.
And I mean, nothing's happened. I mean, what happens in America doesn't affect Canada, right? Like, you guys are down there. You're never going to come up here, right?
I've mentioned this before on the show. I've mentioned this before on the show. That is the going line in all of Canada for why they care so deeply about American politics. And I go, well, how does it affect you? How does what happens in America affect you? And no one had a good answer. It was just
we currently have a good answer.
Apparently, you do. For what?
We do. There's going to be
I'm happy to welcome you in.
Will you use force? Economic force. So, but you know what's interesting?
Canada.
Someone actually pointed this out to me. I don't actually think America could take Canada in a war. Now, hold on. Let me clarify what I mean here. Do I think America has a stronger military and all that? Yes, obviously. But here's the thing. Canada's border is massive. Could America invade and we couldn't do much? Yes. But could America hold Canada for a prolonged period of time, such as to make it worth the effort? I mean, you guys couldn't even peaceably keep Vietnam, not because you suck, but because it's really hard to peacefully take a piece of land without just like killing whoever disagrees with you. To do it in a humane way is like almost impossible. And I don't know if America could hold because as you said, Canada is massive and the border is massive. And here's the other thing. America has been in a lot of wars, but never in its home turf. Americans have not had to suffer at home in the way that, say, Europeans have had to suffer at home in the world wars. Americans do not know what it is to truly suffer as a collective people for the war effort. And if you're going to war with Canada, it won't take a lot for a few rebellious people to start lobbing bombs over the side. Like, all you need is a few attacks at home across that massive border for Americans to realize, oh, this wasn't the wars that we've been fighting far away in Iraq. This is more imminent. I don't know if the American people are up to it, to be honest.
Well, I would agree that no one wants a war. I think it's pretty obvious no one wants a war with Canada. But there's actually two big problems with your thesis. One, yes, it is a large piece of land, but you can actually sustain a large piece of land if population density is very low. The United States has over 10 times the population, or around 10 times the population of Canada, which means it doesn't matter how large it is. There's not enough people, that large border, for you to actually defend it well. It's actually a disadvantage to have such a large piece of land if you can't cover that territory.
My point was not that America couldn't take it.
There's a big difference between. There's a number two. There's a big difference between you and Vietnam. The Vietnamese had guns, John.
We have beavers. We have meese. We have polar bears, and we will come with icy fury in our veins.
It's a two-front war. We're coming from Alaska on our polar bears, man.
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Luckily, there's
we're coming
and
two
ice
fronts
up there.
And from Greenland too. Three-front war from Greenland.
My point was not that America couldn't pierce the borders of Canada. Obviously, you could. Obviously, us against you. on a field, you're going to win. My point was that it is incredibly hard to hold even a city, even a small piece of land. And all it takes is a few revolutionaries who are willing to blow things up for your efforts to be constantly thwarted, which America has learned over and over again in its foreign involvements. It's easy to invade a country. It's hard to hold it sustainably. And all it's going to take is a few Canadians saying, oh, I'm not going to have any of this, eh? I don't know, the England kind of seeped into that accent, but like who come out with their hockey sticks and blow up some stuff. And my point being,
they do that in Quebec right now, and you're holding it all right. Yeah.
But my point being, Canada is a lot bigger than a small Middle Eastern country. It's very large. Obviously, you could invade. I don't know if you could legitimately hold it for a prolonged period of time.
Agree to disagree. But obviously, we're not here to talk about this. This is completely impromptu, just in case anyone's curious. John, you said you had some sort of personal news update, and I wanted to go first.
It is personal because I'm Canadian. All right, I'll tell you the actual personal update. The actual personal update is, you might have noticed if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, that I'm not filming from my normal office with my snobby books in the background. I'm filming from what appears to be a home, because there was a fire at my university campus and the entire cafeteria burned down, and my office is connected to the cafeteria and has been smoked out, and you're not allowed to go in there. So we'll see what kind of damage there is once we get more going on there. But yes, I'm not in my office because part of the university burnt down, and so I'm at home with a mic I borrowed from elsewhere. So yay, fires! So timely.
I was this close to choosing an LA fire news story. I'm really glad I didn't. It might have been too traumatizing for it. You might have you've broken down in tears mid-episode.
Because we were trying not to talk about the mainstream news. It's like, okay, Jonathan will just talk about his personal stuff. But he's Canadian, so he's freaking out about that stuff going on. But
Indeed.
and then fire, because in his personal life, fire. So we can't avoid the LA fires. We can't avoid the Trump presidency. We tried. We really tried.
I don't know why. I feel like this is God telling you a personal message. I don't know what it is, but it just feels too perfect.
It's too pointed. Yeah. So fire will come for you. So Canadians and Californians.
Well, you know what's going to help you?
What?
You know what's going to help you through all of this time, though, John?
What is that?
Alcohol.
Aw, that's sweet. Did you get me some?
Alcohol. No, I have not. I have not gotten you any alcohol, but I do have a lovely new couple of studies that have come out on the efficacy of alcohol or the effects of alcohol for our health. Believe it or not.
Oh, this was a good pivot. That was a natural pivot. Good job.
Absolutely natural pivot. So. A lot of people heard recently that the Surgeon General has said don't drink alcohol because it might cause cancer. So I wanted to look this up and see, like what are the studies that are coming out. There were actually, I found, this is from an article from Ars Technica. There's actually a couple of studies that have come out that seem to show somewhat contradictory results about the effects of alcohol. And I'm like, I got to get into this. So I was looking at this.
It's of deep personal resonance to Seth.
Absolutely.
He can barely do an episode without a beer in his hand.
So while I was sipping my Bud Light reading this article, that's not true, just in case. So anyway, what they found from a bunch of... I'm realizing now that I need to specify, considering where I'm located at job-wise. No, jokes, people. Don't take this seriously. Take nothing we say seriously.
If you can't see, for our Spotify listeners, he has a 2 liter of vodka in both hands. He's double fisting it right now.
Yeah.
If you can't.
16% lower risk of all-cause mortality, death from any cause, compared to lifelong abstainers. So according to this meta-analysis, is that drinking actually reduces the risk of death. Data from 4 studies indicate that modern drinking in males has a 16% lower risk of all-cause mortality than never drinking males. Now, this is in males. It's slightly different in females. Additional analysis found that the risks of all-cause mortality was 20% lower in moderate drinkers less than age 60, and 18% lower in moderate drinkers age 60 and up. I don't know how that you get 16% from 18 and 20, but nevertheless, I'm reading the stats as they appear before me. And more to the point, it says, overall, the reviewers concluded that consuming a moderate amount of alcohol was associated also with a higher risk of cancer.
Wait, so overall, alcohol is beneficial for your health, but cancer.
Yes,
but everyone
hears
cancer and assumes that everyone hears cancer and assumes that dominates the discussion.
Yes, but overall, it's made up. Yeah, but because it's made up for in cardiovascular disease mortality goes down by 18% for moderate drinkers. And it's even more so in women, where breast cancer is obviously more of a risk. So it is a higher cancer risk, but apparently alcohol helps you in other ways. It offsets it.
That's interesting. Is it because, if you drink, you find existence more tolerable, and so you're less likely to kill yourself? What's the argument here?
I don't know. They don't talk. I mean, it's a scientific study, so it's not speculating on like the causes or anything. It's just cause and effect sort of things. Like, for women, moderate drinking is 1 drink. For men, it's 2 drinks, because obviously men are on average bigger, so they're trying to weigh this out based on body size. And so, like, a couple of drinks a day apparently scares the cardiovascular disease away. I don't know.
That's interesting. And as you said, you can't speculate on causes per se. But I wonder if there's any psychological stuff there, like the people who are willing to chill at the end of the day and have a drink. There's less stress in their lives. They're letting things go. They're not holding on to that in their hearts, and they sleep better.
See, what you're saying is it's not the drinks themselves that are helping them. It's the lifestyle that can cause moderate drinking can also lead to a better lifestyle.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if it's correlation or causation.
I know, and it doesn't really talk about that. So here it's meta-analysis of the association. So it's just correlation, I think. I mean, I got no further into this than this very brief article.
Okay.
But it also increases cancer. So it's one half dozen or the other. Overall, they said it was overall better to drink a little bit. I thought this was fascinating. And the reason I really thought this was interesting is with obviously the Christian taboo on alcohol, especially in Middle America.
Which is so interesting to me. I mean, there's a couple
you come from Canada. Yeah.
Well, so I grew up in Canada. Like, we weren't getting wasted all the time.
Soon to be non-existent Canada.
The 51st state. At least immigration would become easier for me if we were assumed.
No kidding. You're not looking at the positives here, John.
Yeah, you haven't considered the positives of imperialism.
Yes.
No. What was I gonna say? Like growing up, on special occasions, like as young as 5 or 6, we would have champagne. Christmas breakfast or a cup of champagne for New Year's, right? Growing up as a young kid. And that might be once or twice a year. It was like, but it was definitely much more part of the culture, much more just sort of assumed. And I don't even know what the drinking age is in Canada because it didn't matter and we didn't need to know because everyone was drinking anyway. What is it in America? Is it 21? Seth's
21.
Silent. Seth's just appalled. He's just in horror. But yeah, so like coming to America, it was
picking up some lag.
Oh, we are. Should I keep talking?
Yeah.
But coming to America, to go to Ozark, to like this Bible college in Missouri, it was quite surprising, especially because alcohol was embedded for me, not just in Canadian culture, but in religious culture. Like, I think some of the most consistent source of alcohol for me growing up was communion wine. Because we actually had wine in the communion, right? Like, and at all the church events, people were drinking and there was wine and all of this stuff. Like, and of course, for us, it's like Jesus turned water into wine. Like, how is this a conversation? But then there's this whole religious culture in the Midwest that's was surprising to me.
Alcohol is part of our religion. Yeah, and that's... I mean, it is, and that's the funny thing. We say we take the Bible literally until it says wine. But all that to say, will like positive health benefits start to change this mentality? I feel like it's already beginning to change, that we live in a sort of post-prohibition era. I mean, when you look at how much alcohol was abused in America, prohibition made a lot of sense at that time. But we
Hmm.
live in an era now where we're beginning to think maybe our theology is closer to Muslim and Mormon theology than it is to actual, traditional Christian theology. I
Hmm.
hope that we can have a healthier attitude, because I do tend to think that it's nearly the fact that it is forbidden, this hidden substance that
It is
makes out.
taboo.
Yeah, it's exactly. You tell someone not to do something. It's like, don't touch that. What's the first thing you want to do?
Yeah.
Touch it, right?
Well, it's interesting because I never had a real desire to drink a lot as I grew up because I'd had a few drinks my whole childhood. Like it wasn't a
It's
big,
yeah,
like I wasn't violating some sacred covenant with my parents in that way. It wasn't sexy or exciting or rebellious. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I'm afraid that we actually might be making the problem worse by doing that, by not actually taking a biblical view. That's just my hope, and I'm hoping that like positive health benefits coming out of this might allow us to sort of hopefully take a healthier approach to this. Obviously there are restrictions that we still want to do. I'm heavily in favor of helping people who struggle with drunkenness, and maintaining a strong line on like that is going too far. There's a lot of people who really struggle with that. So I don't want to be heard not saying that. But at the same time, there's a lot of people, you bring this up all the time, who struggle with overeating, and we never talk about overeating. And
Yeah.
we never talk about fasting either. We don't have a healthy attitude with food or drink. So I'm just angry at everyone, John.
No, and I think it's a really good point. We've made it sexier, and if we're a little looser, especially, um, kids wouldn't feel the need to rebel
Sexier
in
and
this way.
looser.
Did I say sexy? No, but I think about this particularly in the context of serial killing. I've been trying to encourage young people to, try killing a few wild animals or a squirrel or something like that. Get it out of your system, kind of, and then it won't be exciting when they get older.
Yeah, when you start killing. I don't know. Is this a weird transition? This is a weird transition.
Yeah.
It's not even hidden. Well,
I don't know.
okay,
Wait,
just go.
I'm not transitioning to serial killers. I was just making a joke.
No, that sounded so much like you were just awkwardly transitioning. What do you have, John?
I don't have anything.
You have no news story?
I was just making a serial killer joke, Seth.
No, I get it. But what news story? We got to move on. What news story do you got?
Well, hell has apparently frozen over.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
It feels that way outside.
There was snow in Texas this week.
That's your news story?
Yeah, that was it. I just wanted to make a joke about hell
There's
freezing
snow in
over.
Texas all the time.
I know.
Oh, it's the hell comment.
Oh, it's just a joke. Well, okay, so I did have a story here. Just a few weeks ago, 2 men were found dead in Oregon after going searching for Bigfoot.
So that it is a serial killer. You totally could have pivoted.
No, I didn't pivot to but I'm pivoting to Bigfoot because I know
Bigfoot is a serial killer.
Bigfoot is the Bigfoot murders.
The Bigfoot murders. Yes.
Yeah. So,
well, did you ever see that Hulu? Did you ever see that Hulu series called Bigfoot, where Bigfoot like supposedly killed these people, but then you find out it was like this gang serial kill, like this gang that went in and killed them?
No, I've been finding TV kind of cuts into my drinking lifestyle, so I've been trying to avoid it.
Well, that's why Bigfoot remains undiscovered. None of us are sober. That's why they're all blurry. All the photos are blurry of him.
Yeah. But anyways, two adult males, one was like 30, one was 60, gave their life for the cause, Seth. They were so dedicated that over Christmas break, they went out to go and find Bigfoot, and they never returned. And does that mean that they failed in their search, or does it mean they succeeded and are now with our Bigfoot?
I feel for
Lord?
these. I feel for people who do this. Like it's if you go squatching is what it's called. You go squatching, go out and searching for Bigfoot. At the end of the day, you don't expect to find him, but it's a fun thing to do. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, we're gonna go out. We're not just hiking in the woods. We're gonna go find Bigfoot, right? And John, we lived in Vancouver together, and you deeply wanted to go out camping and hiking one day to go see if we can find Bigfoot.
I just wanted to hang out.
That could have been us.
I was lonely. I wanted a friend.
Little did I know how life-threatening what you were asking me to do was.
Yeah, it turned
So
into
what
the
was the
Blair
cause
Witch
of their
Project.
death?
I think the
What was the
official
cause of their
cause
death?
of death was there was just a giant foot mark in there just no, it was
Teeth marks.
yeah, exposure based on weather conditions and quote ill preparedness. They didn't really know quite what they were doing, and I mean this is in winter, right? Like their plan was to come back Christmas Eve, so they just weren't ready to do what they were doing.
So I have heard a rumor that missing people that never reappear, like cases of that, correspond to Bigfoot sighting areas. Now, I don't know.
Really?
I've never seen like a graph or a study. I've heard this said, and I've heard it said multiple times. And if this is true, though, part of me is like, well, that's just because like deep forest is where you're going to get lost, and that's also probably if you're going to see a Bigfoot, it's not going to be in like New York City.
Yeah. No,
So
I guess
it's one of those things. It's like it's probably just even if it's true that it's just
even
correlation. I have no idea if it's true.
Well, so I could see
or it
someone
could
being
be
like,
Bigfoot's killing people.
or these people never died and they wander the forest and they are who we see as the Bigfoot and confuse them with Bigfoot.
Oh,
Their ghosts or their zombie-ic forms wander still.
They don't shave, and it just eventually gets all over their. Okay, there is a story way back, like 100 years ago, about a man who was kidnapped by Bigfoot and lived with him for 3 days.
Really?
Yes, it's like
what's the story?
Like 3 days, 5 days. Well, basically, he was in a. This is from memory. He was sleeping in his sleep sack, and
his
he
sleep
like
sack.
felt his sleep sack, his sleeping bag, and then like he felt someone grab the end and start pulling it, like so he closed it off and like dragged him, and lo and behold, it's a family of Bigfoot who like keep him as a pet.
Big feet
and one little foot. And yeah, they apparently had a little foot. And so finally, like he's like with them and he's too scared to escape. And then one day he's like going through his sack and he has like this chewing can of tobacco. And he puts a little bit in his mouth, and then like the big male says, he's motioning towards them. So he hands it to him and he takes the entire thing and like all the tobacco and throws it in his mouth. And right then, of course, if you do that, it was just like overwhelming burning sensation. So he's there like, and that's whenever this guy says, I got to get out of here, grabs his gun and runs out with just his gun. The female starts chasing him and he fires behind him over his head. Up to this point, he hadn't actually tried to fire on them or kill them at all. Fires over her head, so she runs off. And then he like runs to the nearest town, like completely disheveled, like half naked, I think, with an unloaded gun. And people are like, what the heck happened to you? And that's a story. It's a real famous, Bigfoot story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
What does this have to do with what we normally talk about?
I mean, we have one episode about Bigfoot that we did way back. I think you're embarrassed of it. But I'm, Fine, I got another news story. Unless you want to hit one up.
Go ahead.
You go.
No, go ahead.
All right.
No,
Go.
Go ahead.
Well, speaking of big hairy men, The Passion 2 is about to start filming. And this has been on my radar for a while, but Mel Gibson reappeared recently on the Joe Rogan podcast and talked about it. And it's happening. The script is written. They're planning to de-age Jim Caviezel. And this is a quote here. He says, "It's an acid trip of a movie. I think in order to tell the story properly, you have to really start with the fall of the angels, which means you're in another place, another realm. You need to go to hell." So The Passion 2, obviously, I think it's actually going to be the resurrection of the Christ. That's the official title. But I don't think it's going to do what The Chosen does, where, it's just the Book of Acts or something, or just even the resurrection. Well, what The Chosen will eventually do. I think it's literally the first movie ends, then we go down into the grave with Jesus, going into this Dante vision of hell. I think that's what it's going to be. And that's why he said it's an acid trip of a movie. And it's going to start with the fall of the angels, and you're going to be in another realm, and you need to go to hell. That's a direct quote. I think we're getting Dante's Inferno.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think we're getting Dante's Inferno, but with Jesus descending into hell, which isn't in scripture, but it is in one of the earliest creeds that he descended into the dead, that he literally went to hell when he died, and then rose again.
There is that scripture that talked about, he preached to those who were in prison during the days of Note, right?
Yeah, which could be a scriptural way to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not completely out of nowhere that this idea that Christ descended into hell and he was there for the 3 days, liberating souls who were there or something like that. That's taken from a very difficult to understand scripture. All that to say, though, back to the movie.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Stoked. Well, the fall of the angels is like that. Oh, that could either be really corny or super epic.
So here's my only reason I have faith in this is he started talking about this. The first time I heard about it was on the Colbert Show, like 2016. So this has been gestating for 9 years. And he said in the interview, it's really hard to get the script right. And I imagine it is. How do you depict the supernatural in a way that isn't ridiculous? But it sounds like they've taken the time to actually do it. So we'll see what actually happens. So
I'm going to keep my expectations down. That way I will be even more surprised if it is good. I'm going to just try and level them out. What I will say, Joe Rogan's had a lot of Christian stuff on recently.
He has. It's kind of interesting. He had he also
Wes
had
Huff.
Who?
Wes Huff.
Wes Huff. But he had the guy we had on. We had him a week after we had him. He had Stephen Meyer on the show to talk about design, biological design, intelligent design, like a week after we had him on our show. And it's the most.
You're welcome, Stephen Meyer.
Yes, it was us.
Obviously. But recently, like right before the Mel Gibson thing, he had Wes Huff, who was a biblical scholar, on, and he recently was in a debate. I don't know if you saw this, John, with Billy Carson, where Billy Carson's like a more of a new age thinker, and Billy Carson had been on the Joe Rogan podcast, and Wes Huff just ripped him to shreds, just decimated him, and it blew up, and now Wes Huff has become like a major deal, and to the point now that he's on Joe Rogan podcast talking basically about the history of the Bible, arguments for Jesus, and then right after that he has Mel Gibson on talking about a movie about the resurrection of Jesus.
Well, I mean, because there's this kind of bro space that I think, you have with like Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, these kind of guys, to some extent, even if you factor in the tech side of things, like Elon Musk is kind of in that group as well. And all of them are becoming vaguely more Christian. And I mean, Jordan Peterson sounds like he actually believes in Jesus recently. If you saw that interview where he actually said that Jesus is God. And it's interesting because I do a lot critiquing muscular Christianity and the masculinizing of Christianity in an overly testosterone sort of way. Like there's part of me that's skeptical of that, but I'm also like, okay, if these guys are coming to Jesus, that's great. Like, and hopefully that
maybe they can see even flaws and all. Maybe there's some truth. There's a gem beneath the dirt or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I think Christ has a lot to say about both fulfilling and subverting traditional masculinity, and if they can find whatever it is they're looking for in him, I think that's a way forward, both for where they currently are, but unto salvation. So
that actually transitions perfectly into one of mine, which is Real Clear Politics did an article recently on the rise of cultural Christianity. And it talks about Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson. It talks about all these figures and how they're warming up to Christianity. One of the people it talks about is Tom Holland. Not that Tom Holland, not Spider-Man, but the historian Tom Holland, who wrote the book Dominion. And I saw this article, and I just had to borrow a couple quotations. So I'm going to read them verbatim. Talking about Tom Holland, this historian who, when he's researching Christianity, kind of began to figure out like how Christian the world is and how good Christianity has been for the world. They say, within his own reasoning, Holland revealed his inward struggle and the reality that increasingly he contemplated Christianity to be true. He shared the analogy of a child learning to swim or ride a bike. The child may paddle or stay upright for a few seconds, but then he sinks or falls. But it makes my life more interesting, I think, Holland reflected. Holland's personal grappling with Christian truths reflects a potential cultural shift back to Christian values. Their praise, however, of Christian values, and this is where the critique comes in, specifically forgiveness and charity, which is what they like. A lot of these people are coming at it because they see a lack of forgiveness and charity from certain aspects of our culture. Their praise of Christian values views religion from an entirely beneficial approach instead of a salvific need. This is the cliff cultural Christianity cannot breach. Optimism and happiness, which they say they find in Christianity, do not lead to salvation. Salvation requires a recognition of one's own depravity and utter dependence upon the grace of God. Only by that grace do the benefits of Christianity, such as peace, happiness, and stability, exist. The benefits of Christianity and the, quote, boringness of atheism, to quote some of them, that's actually a quote from Holland, may be catalysts for more professions of faith. And so I think that hits on exactly what you're saying, is they're attracted to it. But I think this author, despite that seeming positive, is a bit nervous about the motivation.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting place to take it, Seth, because yeah, there's this triumphant, this, you can argue that a lot of Western frithing and humanistic values come out of the Christian tradition. And that is kind of based on, the like they want that resurrected glory, but they don't want to die to get it. They don't want the crucifixion. They want one half of that piece. And in some ways, one half of Christ. They want that vision of resurrected humanity and all of its glory and all that the human being can be, but they don't want the crucifixion to get there. And I mean, that totally connects to what I was saying before about masculinity as well, which I think you're trying to pivot away from a little bit. But I think precisely in that, yeah,
I'm reading the article, John.
No, but
I'm just reading an article.
No, but there's, if you want confidence, identity, something to live and die for, which traditional masculinity is obviously attracted to, like Christianity can give you that purpose, that meaning, but it's also going to subvert it. And it's through picking up your cross and dying daily and self-sacrifice and suffering. And in some ways, having yourself entirely emasculated as Christ was on the cross. And those two things held in tension at the same time, resurrection and crucifixion. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, but you say that, and let's pick Jordan Peterson, though. The sacrificial death for the sake of others. I mean, that is a touch point. That is a sort of trope within culture that we all recognize as like, yes, that is a true hero. Embodied in that is a true hero. That's something Jordan Peterson, for all his stuff on masculinity, really does emphasize, and I think has emphasized a lot more recently. If you read some of his earlier stuff, the way he portrays the world, at least in my reading of it, is very Nietzschean. It's very conflict-based. It's very sort of pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. It's you are at war. You are in the battle. You can either retreat away and wither away like the effeminate, emasculated man you are, or you can pick up and fight. Now, it's a very different. It seems to have shifted, and I'm curious if it is part of that interaction that he's had with Christians around him, which is the world isn't fundamentally about conflict and you fighting and that sort of stuff and hierarchy and finding your place. It's fundamentally about peace, and that peace is found through Christ. And he's really emphasized that, especially for all its perks and all its goodness and badness. His recent book, it does emphasize that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, it'll be really interesting to see where all of this goes, and whether Western society and these thinkers can accommodate fully what you're saying, the full trajectory of the Christian story, not just the glory, but the other sides as well.
I've often said there's three ways that I can see the conservative side of the United States and Western culture going. One is a sort of Nietzschean hyper-masculinization that's probably best embodied by Andrew Tate. And I think it's really what you see, and you can very clearly see a sort of stereotyped masculinity as portrayed as normative, as this is what you should be. You should be the big macho guy who works out and makes a bunch of money and doesn't rely on anyone. That's one that's the scary one. The second one is a sort of a self-actualized masculinity, one that isn't as extreme, that looks at masculinity, that looks at culture as something as pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, but also sacrifice yourself for family and for others and for the culture. It's a bit more communal in that way. And that's a bit where Jordan Peterson is right now. And the third one is a sort of retreat back into a fundamentalist Christian viewpoint, which is to sort of shelter yourself in religion and nationalism in a way that doesn't see Christianity in any sense as in critique of the nation, but merely as sort of embodied in the nation. And those are three ways, and all three, I think, have their flaws. But and if it's going to go a certain way, I do have fears in all three, even though some, I think, obviously have more resonances with true Christian values than others.
What would you see as the fourth alternative?
The fourth alternative? Oh, you mean like a correct alternative?
Yeah, I mean, do you see there being a correct alternative, or do you just see us as torn between these extremes?
I mean, I don't think it's emerged yet. I think what might be a positive sign is the fact that you do see people like Peterson becoming more theologically aware and more theologically, he's correcting a lot of the things that I had a problem with earlier on. And I really enjoy that. And not so much because, you know, for any other reason than that he reaches something like 10 million people a day. And if that in some way is paving a ground for where you can then say, actually, where Jordan Peterson, everything that you resonated in him led him back to Christ. Same with you. Everything that your heart is looking for will also be found in Christ. I see that as paving a way there where we see Christianity not as a reaction against liberalism, as a weapon for, you know, combating certain social forces, but as something that stands, a church that truly stands outside the culture and welcomes everyone from it, while also standing in critique of all cultures, of all nations. That we truly see ourselves as a unique entity that doesn't live in the service of the state, but lives always as prophetically speaking to the state while also supporting, you know, as good citizens of it. That makes sense? That's a very complex system wrapped up very simply.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's difficult to know.
Yeah, and that's a long lecture that I give through multiple classes that I've just summarized in a few bits. I want to switch to something a little bit more lighthearted, if that's cool.
Sure, go for it.
John, TikTok's back.
Yeah, I've never used TikTok except, but I downloaded it like a week before the ban was going to go into effect because I was just like, well,
you wanted an app that didn't work?
Well, I see, but we didn't think it wouldn't work. At first, we thought that the app would keep working, but you just wouldn't be able to download it in the store anymore, and you wouldn't be able to get updates, and it would slowly become out of date, and it would stop working in like 6 months or a year or something. So I thought, okay, I'll download it before then, because the government can't literally go onto your phone and delete the app once you've downloaded it, but they can prevent the store from allowing it. But yeah. So I downloaded it like a week and a half ago. They can shut down
the servers.
Well, I mean, I downloaded it a week and a half ago, and I'm addicted. I'm already addicted. And the algorithm's telling me things about myself I didn't want to know, Seth. So,
well, I'm glad you're self-reflective enough to see that, because that's actually where I wanted to go. So it was short-lived. It was like 12, 13 hours or something like that. It was offline. And it felt like just absolute panic amongst some people. Like, oh my gosh, you know, for 12 or 13 hours before Trump came in and saved the day and brought it back, whatever. I don't like TikTok, and I've never made this a secret. And it's exactly for what you're saying, John.
Because you don't want to have things revealed to you, Seth, about your psyche.
Yes,
it knows you too deeply.
I like living in ignorance of all my sinfulness. As far as I'm concerned, I'm perfect. I don't want the algorithm revealing stuff. God doesn't speak in an algorithm, John. No. So the reason
he is the Logos, literally algo. Like he's part of the word.
Algorithm.
Wait, no, etymol. I gotta spell it out.
If you rearrange the letters, I'm sure you could get something.
Okay, yeah. Algo is the L and the G there. Was that allogo? I think there's something there. There could be something there etymologically.
Oh, okay. TikTok is a bane on society. I really do. It shortens attention spans. People are like obsessed with it. I was reading this article, and here's one from a TikTok influencer. I feel like I'm going through heartbreak. This platform is more than an app or a job to me. I have so many memories on here. I have posted every day for the past 6 years of my life. When the app returned on Sunday, she posted a video smiling and dancing with overlaid text that read, "Longest 13 hours of my life, and I was sleeping for 9 of them." Now, first off, congrats to TikTok influencers who actually can get 9 full hours of sleep in their life. I miss those days. Number 2, it just names something good that TikTok has brought to us, John.
So it's interesting. I do think that TikTok allows people to communicate in the same way that like Facebook and so like this does connect people, but in Facebook it feels, I don't know,
more personal.
Well, so like on Twitter, for example, the Twitter dialogue feels much more hateful to me.
Oh yeah.
The TikTok dialogue feels more like a community that's learning from each other, supporting each other, like on a journey together with each other. I'm not saying you can't find some dark places on TikTok, but it does feel like there's more of an actual conversation going on. And perhaps that's the visual medium. Like when you reduce people to 150 letters on Twitter, you're not seeing a person, but with an actual face in a video, there's something more intimate and personal about that.
You have to look him in the face and talk to him.
Yeah, if you want to call this person a Nazi, you have to like make a video with your face, having seen their face, often in their own home. Like they filmed in their home. Their kids might be screaming in the background. Like these are real people. I felt like TikTok made that more real. And I felt like a lot of people seem to be learning and growing through TikTok and having conversations that, you know, they might be stuck at home all day doing laundry or, you know, and TikTok allowed them to be engaged culturally and with other people in the same niche of society as them. Like, oh, here's 1,000 people making videos who are going through the exact slice of life that you're going through as well, or in your profession.
That's a fear of mine. So here's the thing. So it used to be, if you were the weird person in town and you had all these weird views, you still had to talk to everyone, communicate with them. Like there was a lot of social pressure to not become a conspiracy theorist or all this other weird stuff. Society helped form you. Now
we put all those conspiracy theorists together in a bubble.
1,000 other people.
So you're saying that we've kind of taken all the conspiracy theorists, put them in a little bubble together, and now they're festering, they're reproducing, they're multiplying.
Disgusting bubble. No. Okay. I like conspiracy theories. I think they're fun to do. I don't actually believe any of them. I think they're interesting and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to insult people who believe this. What I am trying to insult is the idea that no matter how weird or out of touch your view might be or crazy, you can find a community of people just like you to reinforce, to rally, and do stuff together. Yes, including really nasty beliefs like Nazism, John.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I get that, but I'm not sure if that's inherent specifically to TikTok. Hello,
TikTok
the internet
is
in
Nazis.
general.
Yes.
Like, you know, Reddit, all these places. But what I would say is, I mean, I don't know if that's an issue with technology as more just the way that groups work. If you want to have group solidarity and community, that's always going to isolate you from those outside of the group, those who are different from you. And that's inevitable to community, to finding others like yourself that you can connect with, communicate with. And so, you know, like
that's good. Get rid of the weirdos.
But at the same time, I still want people to have community and to see themselves reflected in others and to know they're not alone. And to feel like they have people dangerous. They can talk about on the same. No, I think this is inherent to the nature of community. That's what I'm saying. Anytime you have unity,
a primarily online community is dangerous, John. It's so dangerous.
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying those dangers are inherent to the nature of community itself.
It's so much more so on the internet. That's why, like, it went down for 13 hours, and this person was scared to death. So many
Well, you
people
can
were
find
scared
that
to
about
death.
everything. You can find somebody who says that about sports teams. It doesn't mean sports are horrible. I agree. Perhaps the danger is amplified by TikTok, but you could argue that the potential benefits are also amplified by TikTok because all these people who've never been able to find their people are suddenly able to find them and not feel alone anymore. And that's not a minor thing. You know, to find people that you can actually connect with in this lonely world, like that's significant. So yes, we can admit the pros. Oh, we can admit the cons, but there's
So
arguably commensurate
this is
pros.
testable. This is testable. Does that has lonely feelings of loneliness and community, have they gone up since the rise of social media, or have they gone down, especially in youth who use it?
Well, that's a whole other conversation because we can talk about social
They've gone.
media
You
as
know,
a
it's
whole.
not.
No, I
It's
have
the
plenty of
same.
critiques. I have plenty of critiques of social media that I would share with you. But the whole issue from the beginning has been, why are we singling out TikTok? Why TikTok instead of YouTube, Facebook, all of these other things, all of these other places taking
I
our
think
data?
I criticize them all. I think TikTok is particularly bad, though. Go ahead.
Okay. No, that's all I was saying is, you know, I'm not sure there's a unique critique here.
I think there is. I just cannot wait until you make the little TikTok shorts for this whole video of me just lambasting
just
TikTok.
railing on TikTok, and everyone's
it's railing on it, and then I posted on it.
It'll be our best performing video on TikTok because people will finally be mad enough to comment and be like, "I hate you."
No, I look forward to the comment that says, "I agree, TikTok is evil," while posting this on TikTok.
Well, we all have to descend, incarnate, if you will, into the mess in order to redeem it, Seth. You'd know that if you worship Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
Okay. You have any other stories, or you're just weirdly, deeply theological quasi-insults?
Well, that's our whole shtick. What else do we have?
Apparently. Good.
I don't know if this is a story per se, but something I did want to talk about is it feels like we're on the cusp of humanoid robots, where
you always have something about this.
So
you are so excited for this.
AI conversations, technology is going to meet the robotics industry because I mean we're basically creating robots that can walk around and lift things and do things. And I've seen when I was in London recently when we were both there on our trip last winter, I saw a storefront that was doing demonstrations of robotic cooking where the robot would cook for you in the storefront. Like you insert the ingredient packets and then it'll empty the ingredients into the saucing pan. It'll flip it. It'll toss it. It'll stick a spatula in. It'll shake it when it needs to. It'll add all the ingredients and it'll do the cooking for you. So a lot of the elements for a humanoid in-house robot are already here. You had Musk this year come out with a physical one he had on stage, and a lot of estimates are saying that we're going to get those in the next 3 to 5 years. They're going to be affordable within the next 10 to 15. So what, like, I want to discuss it. Maybe even theologically. What is this going to mean?
I went to a sushi restaurant recently where the waiters were all robots. Little oval robots that came around and were playing music. And when you ordered a sushi, they just had a little thing. It says, "Thank you. Do you need anything else?" And it was the most... Don't ask me why, but it was the most annoying thing in the world. I was like, I would rather... I know I don't have to tip you, but I would pay more money than I normally give in a tip for you to go away and stop playing this annoying music. I was deeply offended by this inhuman robot serving me sushi for some reason. And I couldn't tell you why. But there was something that was my wife was just like thrilled by this little robot who came out and did it. And I'm sitting there just scowling, and I'm like, you're taking my jobs. People blame the immigrants. I blame you. I blame the robots.
I blame the robots.
I blame the robots.
I mean, the irony there that Elon Musk might be like getting on board with the anti-immigrant cause, well, raising up a robot army that's actually going to take all of the jobs. I mean,
that's what he wants. No.
That's what he wants.
Well, he did get in trouble recently because he was very pro-immigration. You missed. That's a different story.
I did see that. Yeah. I did see that as well. But there might be an irony there.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why he doesn't want the immigrants. They'll take the jobs from the robots.
So, what do you think is theologically going to change when we have human forms walking around. Like, because AI is one thing, AI in your computer, but actual human shapes. Like, how's that going to impact the Imago Dei that there's a robot that's smiling at you, chatting with you, doing all the things around the house that you do, playing with the kids? Like, what is it going to do?
I had someone reach out to me. It's one of our listeners reach out and say, "Hey, love the show. I'm actually writing a book on a philosophical fiction book. And one of the things that they're dealing with is this idea of, can AI become conscious and how would we know?" I think if you're going to talk about a theological issue, the idea that there is a robot out there with essentially a human consciousness and yet a robot body that we have created is going to be fascinating, is going to be terrifying. Because what happens when you flip the off switch?
Yeah. I mean,
is this person, I will use this word, this AI person, do they have salvation? Do we baptize them? Uh-oh, electronics.
Well, so the part of me is like, no, we do not. They are not real. Do not ascribe inner consciousness to something that we've forged.
You're not going to be baptizing your toaster?
There's part of me that I'm thinking of in Lord of the Rings, and I think I brought this up in like 3 episodes now. In the beginning, Iluvatar did not intend to make the dwarves. It was one of his fellow created
Valar.
Valar, who came along and against Iluvatar's will created a new species of dwarves. And then
it wasn't against his will. It wasn't against his will.
I mean,
because
he allows
everything
it.
Was. Yeah, he does allow it. Yeah.
But it wasn't part of his plan. It wasn't the original song. But then Iluvatar sort of
But even the Discord of Melkor... Okay, we're getting real. Okay, I get what you're saying. I'm sorry.
The god figure in Lord of the Rings then accepts these dwarves, these creations that he did not create, but that his own creations have sub-created, you could say. And he accepts them into the fold, and they become part of his creation and accepted. And I almost wonder, how different is that from the Gentiles and the Jews? Like, if we can create robots that are indistinguishable from human children, have we birthed into the world our own creations and can only pray that God will adopt them and care for them once we're gone? I don't, there's part of me that's disgusted by what I just said, but there's also part of me that's like, if I'm just going to set aside my disgust and try to remain as open to the future as possible, I imagine that might be one direction a lot of Christians end up going. Not for a while, not for probably 100 or so years, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, call me a human supremacist, but I'm just like completely against that. I do. And like, maybe it's because I've read one too many stories about like Catholic robot priests taking confession and that sort of stuff that I'm just like, I hate this. I like the Dune universe where they like have this anti-robot rebellion. And I'm just like, yeah, that's right. There's something that resonates deeply within me. Yeah, call me prejudiced. I don't like it at all. Now, but you bring up this idea of subcreation, which is a big deal for Tolkien, which is that we, in some sense, participate in God's creative activity. And that's a big part of Tolkien's theology. But and I've read people who think that, like in creating these entities, these AI entities, that we are literally, like, in some sense, being the hands and feet of God, creating new beings into existence.
There are ways to theologically accommodate it.
We did that with that doesn't
dogs.
Mean we
should.
We did that with dogs. We created essentially a new species.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry, go ahead.
That's it. Dogs, John.
Dogs. The dogs. They're creating the dogs. We've our breeding of dogs and taking control of artificial selection, I guess. Is that the right term?
Yeah, we created a new species.
Well, and we already do. We are subcreating. We create children. We already are the hands and feet. And I agree there's a qualitative distinction between that and robotics. But what if future generations just don't make that distinction? I can see how they're going to slowly chip away at it until that distinction is not there anymore. And theologically, I don't like that they're doing that, but I'm not sure that it's just totally ridiculous. I see the lines that are going to form to get there.
Well, that brings on the question, okay, well, if AI if that's a full, let's just say a human being, a robot is a human being. And then why not just download your consciousness, if that ever becomes a thing, into a robot and be immortal?
Well, that's what the resurrection of the body is, Seth. We're going to reach the apex point of humanity where we become God and go back in time and create ourselves. And
everything you just said just made me throw up a little bit in my mouth. It's not even because it's stupid. It's because I've heard really smart people who've actually said stuff like this, and I can't stand it, John. I really can't. There are certain things in the news that I just never want to deal with.
Yeah. No, I get that. You want to hide in a little ball. You would be a monastic in the medieval period, just fleeing from society.
That sounds like Canada as a country. I'm so excited for it to be our 51st state. Thanks again for listening to the Spiritually Incorrect podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe below, or to check us out on Spotify. And if you want to hear more from this week's episode or guest, our Patreon account has exclusive unaired content, often featuring up to an hour of additional footage and interviews for each episode. We save some of the most controversial and pulse-pounding topics just for our Patreon members. Members get access to that, plus the chance to meet monthly with Jonathan and I, suggest episode topics, join us live for an episode to ask the special guests questions, or even get a personalized episode custom-made just for you. Check out our Patreon link in the description below. And don't forget to check out our official website at spirituallyincorrectpodcast.com to see what else you're missing out on. Sound effects from Zapsplat.com. Special thanks to Jordan Birch, whose song Starry Night provides the intro and outro for this podcast. You can hear more of his music on YouTube or Spotify.